this one. Right. Woo. All right. Hello, everybody. Hello out there in TV land. Welcome to another week in space with me, your forever host, Joan Emerson Bell, or Blind Stallion Space Wizard, depending on which platform you're catching this on and how you relate to me. What's up, Sam? Nice to see you, my friend. Um, I do this show every Monday. Hi, Rainey. Good morning. I do this show every morning live from my super secret wizard lair. Every Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we like to go over the astro weather for the week. So you're not caught off guard. So when things arise, you're like, oh, yeah, that astrologer told me that. Right. I knew this was going to happen. And we know whether we need an umbrella for the week or a Valium prescription or, if we get to celebrate. And so I find that knowing the astro weather doesn't necessarily mean that we get to change it, but instead of kind of getting caught off guard, we have a sense of the archetypes that are at play, and so that we can respond skillfully for the things that arise in the environment, things that arise in the psyche, things that arise in the soul. I'm an advisor on the AstroStar Live app, which is an excellent astrology app. It's a free download. You can find that wherever you get your apps at. I do readings through AstroStar Live, and there's also a number of wonderful astrologers who are dropping some excellent astrological knowledge on a regular basis over there, teaching classes, doing talks, giving readings. Some of those people include Sam Reynolds, Cameron Allen, Bear Hickman, who I collaborate with. They have a podcast called the Inspired Astrology Podcast, which when I'm not way too busy, I am fortunate enough to be able to guest host some of the full moon episodes. So I don't know. Just wanted to bring that in just in case you're new to this show. And you can find me at the AstroStar Live app. There's a link in my bio, and if you're catching this on YouTube, I'll throw a link in the show notes. But yeah, check it out. It's a great astrological community and a great place to learn and sort of discuss and develop. Welcome to this week in space. Let me just backtrack for a second because last week was intense. There's a lot of like weird Neptunian action going on, very confusing, a lot of miscommunication, a lot of like misunderstanding, a lot of frustration that I found. Last week was characterized by a number of squares to Neptune, which is the planet of illusion, delusion, dissipation, right? So things that were promised that we thought were going to go through might have taken a lot more time. Things that were like, oh, this is going to be awesome, might have like petered out or just like dissolved in our hands, like sand, like the sands of time. Um, Oh yeah, Kat was saying I was super sleepy all week. That's another one, right? One of the big things that was happening last week on Thursday, we had the sun squaring Neptune, and the sun is our kind of vital force, right? It is our energy, it is our life force, it is our ability to shine our light into the world and kind of fulfill our purpose. And Neptune is dissipating, so that hard square from Neptune sort of like sapped all the energy out. And I think one of the things that happens when we're like, oh, I have no energy, is that we can sort of spiral into fantasy around, oh, I'm a bad person, nothing's ever going to work, right? Maybe I have an incurable disease, right? And so the kind of fantasy and illusory qualities of Neptune don't really help us out in that case, because it can be really scary and challenging when we don't feel like we have enough energy to fulfill our purpose, to get our work done, to do what we need to do, and then to try and make sense of that instead of being like, oh, it's like a giant sort of like a giant ocean in space is kind of like siphoning off our energy. We internalize it and say, I'm a bad person, it's never going to work, right? And remember, my friends, Neptune is illusory. It's ill and it's for losers. Just kidding. That's a line from one of my favorite movies in history, Babe 2, Pig in the City, which is, I don't know, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Some deep stuff in there. Anywho, we're sort of after the Neptune squares, which just to backtrack again, last Monday, we had Venus squaring Neptune, then Mercury squaring Neptune, and then the Sun squaring Neptune on Thursday, just as they all enter into the cardinal sign of Cancer, marking the summer solstice. If you missed all this, you can go back and watch last week's program. It's on my YouTube. It's in my Instagram archives. It's on the Astrostar Live YouTube. Um, but yeah, we had the summer solstice, which is the sun moving into Cancer. And then yeah, and then we had the Capricorn full moon, which I think brought in like a little bit of the like grounding Saturnian energy, maybe helping to like dry up all of that kind of nebulous, watery, Neptunian, Cancerian emotional business that we've been going through. And it feels like it gave us like a little bit of a place to have some like emotional grounding, emotional regulation, to get to like touch something and be like, okay, this is real. Okay. And if this is real, I have a foundation that I can begin to move from. And I found that to be pretty helpful, even though that Neptunian square was still in full effect. We had a little bit of the like Capricornian, practical Saturnian influence, which we're going to get some more Saturn action this week. And, Saturn gets a bad rap, right? Because they are malefic and they are, a slow moving malefic, like churns through our chart and spends a lot of time like putting pressure on a situation, which can be really uncomfortable. However, ideally, this pressure helps us to grow. It is that pressure that creates the diamond. It is the structures and responsibilities that help us to make things real. We can think about something all day, right? We can dream about it, but we can talk about it. But until we actually take the action and dedicate the energy to taking action and to practicing, the thing is never going to come into being. And this is the kind of Saturnian principle of 3D reality. We live in a Saturn world, my friends, right? It is the limit of the known world. It is the last planet that we can see with the naked eye. It is sort of the kind of bubble that we live in this 3D reality, that is time based, where things are born, they live, and then they decline and they die. Right. This is the Saturn realm that we live in. And like, yeah, that can be a bummer, but also, hey, you're here. So you got to figure it out, right? You got to make friends with these principles at some time. And so this is one of the things that a Saturn return is about. And if you have your natal Saturn in Pisces, then you're going through your Saturn return right now. And so during a Saturn return, especially the first one, we are coming into a relationship with that Saturnian principle, that structuring principle, that limiting principle, right? The thing that's like, oh, you want that? What are you going to do about it? And we're having to like come into a new relationship with the kind of pressures and structures and responsibility of life, and we're needing to show up for it in a way, in order to make what we want a reality. And so, yeah, we've got some Saturnian action this week. The biggest action happening, let's see here, is it Friday or Saturday? Oh, Saturday, the 29th, when Saturn stations retrograde. And so I'll get to that when we get to that, but I think that is the kind of like crux of the week. So, yeah, uh, before I launch into this, how's everybody doing out there? Everyone good? Yeah, everyone having a happy Monday so far? Great. By your silence, I will deduce that everybody's having a great time. And I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. I love getting to do this. And I want to thank Astrostar for nudging me into this position where every Monday I wake up and I'm like, okay, right, let's go, world. So thank you, Rainey, and thank you, Lily, and thank you, Astrostar, and thanks everybody for tuning in. All right. Week gets off to a slow start. but by Wednesday, we start getting some action. Wednesday, June the 26th, we have Mercury in Cancer trining Saturn in Pisces. This is occurring at 19 degrees and 25 arc minutes of the water sign. So, all right. Yeah, Kat. Oh, I'm sorry that you're not having a good Monday so far. Let's see if we can help pick you up or at least bring some context to navigate whatever is happening on this moon day for you. And I know Mondays are rough, but hopefully this helps to give us something to look forward to. So yeah, on Wednesday we get water trine, right? And trines occur between the same elements. So water sign to water sign, earth sign to earth sign, fire to fire, air to air, et cetera, et cetera. This is a water trine. So we have Mercury in Cancer, which is cardinal water, trining Saturn in Pisces, which is mutable water. Right. And so we have this like harmonious flow between planets and water. They're like, okay, I'm like, I got the emotions going, I'm imagining things, right? I'm like in my creative mind, I'm in my emotional body, right? Oh, you are too? Okay, cool. We can vibe. Um, and so Mercury, which is a planet of communication, thinking, processing information, coming into the supportive aspect with Saturn, again, which is like structuring, which is kind of constricting or limiting, or like, about responsibility, right? About maturation. And so we have this like harmonious flow between communication and responsibility. So we get responsible communication, right? That's one way of looking at it. Saturn is a serious fellow. So this can be a good day for serious thinkings, like working on like serious matters and dealing with practical things, right? It gives us the ability to focus on mental tasks for a long period of time. So if you have a project, a mental project, a writing project, a presentation, or something like that you have been putting off, Wednesday would be a good time to get back to it or to start it. I myself have a presentation for the new Hermopolis conference that I've been meaning to put together, and I have not started working on. Don't tell them that. And I think Wednesday is the day that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make an outline, right? Because Mercury, again, thinking Saturn, structure, right? So like ways of structuring our thoughts can be really helpful with this Mercury trine Saturn. Right. Coming into thinking structures, starting to edit because Saturn is austerity. Saturn can be like critical. So, like, really good day for critical thinking, paring things down, saying the right thing at the right time. That gives us a little bit of restraint of pen and tongue. And so, Mercury in Cancer is kind of getting emotional information, right? Getting in tune with, the emotional intelligence, and might be like feeling some feels, or like having some information about the feels that Mercury is feeling. And it might want to communicate a lot of them. And Saturn is like, okay, what is the right thing to say here? How do we sort of like pare this down instead of just like emotionally dumping, right? And just being like, blah, 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 like I had all these feelings, right? Saturn is like, okay, like what is the right thing to say, right? How do we like pare this down and get it very concise? Um, this is also a good time to think about organizing, editing, composition, structuring thought, structuring communication. It's also a good day to have hard conversations. Saturn is the difficult thing that we don't want to do, right? Saturn gives us the ability to do the hard thing that we don't want to do. And so if there's a difficult conversation that we might need to have, Wednesday could be a really good day to do that, because Saturn gives us that structure to be able to like communicate things or have like difficult conversations. Also, again, if we have writing projects or intellectual projects that we haven't started, that we don't want to start, that we should start, Saturn is a lot about shoulds. This is a good day to do it. Um, and Mercury, our mental faculties in a harmonious aspect with Saturn, planet of hard work. So this helps us to like sort of get in and do that mental labor that we might have been putting off, or we might be afraid of doing, or we might be procrastinating. Um, yeah. And yeah, I think that this can be a really good time to communicate feelings or express emotions, or those things that are like very kind of intangible or hard to express, right? Like emotions and feelings can be very difficult to express, or things like dreams, which are also watery, Piscean, right? Things like our imagination can be very hard to express. And so I think Saturn helps to give a structure to help ground these more kind of ephemeral things that can be really challenging to express. And so, yeah, I think that this is, good day to do some thinking, to sort of like get focused. I think there was something else that I was going to say, but I seem to have lost it. So let me give it a second, see if it comes back. Aha, aha, yeah, it did come back. So, Saturn is the malefic of the day, right? So they are into order, structure, being on time, getting things right, all of these sort of like daytime activities. And Mercury coming into this trine, I think really helps to support the daytime activities of organization and structure and writing emails and communicating in efficient and official ways, you know. So that is also something to think about, the kind of way, the types of structure, the types of communication that Mercury might be more inclined to coming into this relationship with Saturn. So just wanted to put that out there. So let me just check the comments. Okay, yeah, Opalescent says that they have a big project to get out of their head, and that they need to get it on paper. And so, yeah, Wednesday would be a great time to just start that, or dedicate some time to really thinking about that. And, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I'm also like, oh, I don't really want to. But, again, I think that this gives us an opportunity to do this hard work that we don't necessarily want to do, or at least to begin thinking about, like, how do I structure this big project that, as I look at it, it seems overwhelming. But I think that what Saturn trine Mercury gives us the opportunity to do is focus on like little piece, right? Like, what is the smallest possible thing that I can do to start working on this thing that I really don't want to work on? And I think it also gives us the opportunity to be like focused on the details. And so if we can like just start with the smallest possible thing, and start with like maybe, not the minutia, but like start with the little things, I think will give us an access point into a bigger project that from this distance might seem overwhelming. So I wish everybody the best of luck doing their challenging mental activities on Wednesday, taking their test, writing their papers, writing the great American novel, whatever it is, I think Wednesday is your day. That brings us to the end of the week, basically. On Friday, June the 28th, we have Mercury in Cancer squaring Chiron in Aries. So Mercury is going to move from this supportive trine with Saturn into a challenging square with Chiron in Aries. So squares occur between signs in the same mode, right? So cardinal squares cardinal, fixed squares fixed, mutable squares mutable. Right. So these signs have like kind of the same vibe, right? Cardinal is like, I'm starting something. And, a cardinal sign in square is like, I'm starting something else, right? And so it's sort of like they're pulling on each other, right? There's this tension because Cancer wants to start, a family gathering, and Aries wants to start, a total like solo mission, right? And so they're like, we're doing this the same weekend, and there can be tension there. And at the heart of a square is the need or the desire to like integrate, right? So how do we have like one person's kind of solo adventure and integrate that into a family gathering, right? And so this is what planets and square are trying to navigate, is how do we integrate these sort of desires that are pushing and pulling at each other. And so again, Mercury, the planet of information, how we and communication, how we process information. Chiron is this wound that like is challenging to heal. It leads us to the medicine ideally, but it is also a wound that continues to like sort of be an issue, right? Something that we continue to need to pay attention to. And so and so Mercury in Cancer, again, we're talking about emotional intelligence, right? They're processing emotion and they are kind of like tuning into what's bubbling up from the like Cancerian tide pool, issues of like safety, issues of community, issues of home and family, right? And the kind of emotional responses that kind of bubble up, and Mercury is kind of processing this, right? And ideally able to uh, uh, sorry, I just read Wounded Healer Mama's comment. Cancer Moon here, it's real dumb right now. Woo, I'm sorry. I have a hard time with Cancer season, by the by. I have my North Node in Cancer, so it's like real weird for me, and it's something that I'm learning to do. But I'm always like, oh, the emotions, oh, get them off me, right? And Mercury, I think, is like helping us to process this, helping us to communicate the like, oh, what is this feeling I'm having? But with the Chiron square, and I wonder, Wounded Healer, if the Chiron uh, moving through Aries is squaring some of your personal planets or your sun, right? Or sorry, your moon. And how that kind of impacts the individual. But yeah, as Mercury is kind of like going through the like accessing the kind of emotional body and the emotional intelligence, and finding ways of communicating the feelings and creating situations that are safe enough where Mercury feels okay to talk about their feelings, right? And Chiron in Aries is sort of like in an individualist sign that's like, I don't want to talk to anybody about this. I'm going to deal with this on my own. I don't need you, right? And so we get this tension of, and I don't know if you've ever been in this place. I have found myself in this feeling a lot, and so this resonates with me. Like one part being like, "Oh, I hurt, right? I hurt," and then it's like, "Oh, I really want to hug," and then somebody gets close, and you're like, "No, no, don't touch me. Like, don't pity me. I've got this." And so we get this tension of like one, this part that like really wants a hug, really wants to talk about what's going on, really wants compassion, really wants sensitivity. And at the same time, there's like, no, like if I do that, then I will be vulnerable and I'll be hurt again. And so it can like really, that Chiron and Aries, I feel like can really kind of like shut down that desire for connection, that desire to communicate the feelings and sort of receive compassion and empathy from it. Um, Oh yeah, we're getting a lot of comments in the comment section about the kind of emotional intensity of the Cancer season, which can also like, feel like a wave just kind of like hitting us. And one of the ways that I think about Cancer is as a tide pool. Um, yeah, see me, but don't perceive me. Right, right. And that I think is like part of this, the tension of Chiron and Mercury, right? This like, I want to hug, but like, no, get away from me, right? Like, I can't be seen as vulnerable, or like I've got to do this myself, and then being like, oh, why is no one like showing compassion to me? Why, like, don't they know I'm hurting? Can't they see I'm limping? Where's my forehead kisses? And then people get close and you're like, no, right? And Chiron has this desire to, when that wound gets activated, Chiron sort of retreats into the cave, right? Into their Chiron cave, which is like a place of, resource, but also is a place of wallowing. And Chiron can have a really hard time when they're in that wallowing phase to like see the resources that are available to them. But what I was going to say a moment ago, and I see this like relationship between the Chiron cave and also the Cancerian zone, right? I think about Cancer as a tide pool, right? Which is a kind of like safe container that provides the conditions for life to develop, right? And so we have this sort of like nurturing tide pool where life and energy is bubbling up. And I think one of the things that happens with Cancer season is that like tide pool needs to get refreshed, and we get these big waves that hit us. And it like, replenishes the tide pool, but it's also like, whoa, that's a lot, right? Oh man, that was pretty overwhelming. And then it's like, okay, like I'm in this tide pool, I'm safe here, things are bubbling up. And so, I think that part of the work in with cancer and with cancer season is like, how do I make a really safe container to like hold this kind of primordial stew that is being able to develop life, right? And we have Chiron's cave as an example of that, right? Where Chiron is like, oh, I'm going to retreat into this cave, which is this container that can hold me in my suffering. However, Chiron, which is a centaur, half human, half horse, is wounded in the animal part, right? In the leg, which is the animal part of their centaur being. And they, if you like see a wounded animal, they like thrash about, and like we kind of our prefrontal cortex, our logical brain, kind of goes offline, right? And it's just kind of the physical response to the pain and deep emotional response to the pain. And so it's like really hard to kind of process what's happening here. What do I need to actually heal or help myself? And this is where Mercury can come in, right? Because Mercury again is like thinking process and is the kind of bridging between the emotional and kind of logical part, right? And so the square is maybe like Mercury kind of coming in and trying to like process some of this and trying to like find a way into Chiron's cave. And it's up to Chiron to be to let somebody in, right? To let in something that helps to replenish, because it's so into being like, I have to hide in here and I can't let anybody see me in my suffering, because that will make me vulnerable and exposed to being hurt again. So one of the ways that we can think about navigating this square is creating a container that is safe enough that other people can come in and give us the forehead kisses that we so desperately need, right? Or long for. And to create structures where we can be open enough and vulnerable enough to allow people to help us heal some of the wounding that is being activated, right? This sort of overwhelming sensitivity is another portion of the Cancer archetype, right? It is the crab that has the outer shell that protects the buttery, delicious goodness on the inside. And when that wound gets activated, it's like all shell all the time, right? And then we're like, oh, my little like any insides, crabby insides are so like sensitive but so lonely, right? Why can't anyone come? Why is no one helping me? And like what people see is this like angry crab that's like, get away from me, right? Don't hurt me. And so yeah, being able to bridge these gaps and or like integrate these sort of opposing feelings. And one of the ways that I thought about perhaps approaching this is Chiron is a teacher by trade, right? This is one of the things that they are really good at, and this is one of the ways that they are able to heal their wounding is by being like, oh, this is what worked for me. Let me teach this to other people. And so, like one of the things that we can think about if we find ourselves being activated later on in the week is maybe doing some classes, right? Taking a class on, emotional intelligence, right? Nonviolent communication, love languages, right? Other forms of like mindful communication or mindfulness. And I think that by learning how to get in touch with our emotions, right? To like sit with our wounding, in whatever way that looks like, but a structured like class type of way might be very helpful for that Chiron part to feel safe enough to be like, oh, okay, I'm learning something and I can apply this to myself and let me try and share this with other people. Mercury is also like an archetype of the student, right? So being able to like take in information, learn some stuff about yourself, learn some stuff about your process, how to navigate this process. So ideally, you can help other people come out of their Chiron cave, come out of their Cancer shell. And I think that the structure of a class can be helpful in creating enough safety for vulnerability to occur. So that was just one thought, right? But like what we're looking for is ways of creating enough safety so that we can be vulnerable, so that we can ask, so we can communicate our emotional needs, feel seen, feel met, and be able to receive whatever that kind of like wounded part is longing for, without that kind of cognitive dissonance of please see me but don't perceive me, come here, go away, and being able to hold both of these things, which Mercury is really good with, and Chiron, when they're in their right mind, is really good with. Also, Chiron being a centaur, half human, half animal, there is this like constant pulling in that part, right? The terrestrial, earthbound part, and the part that is longing for divinity. But Mercury helps us to hold both things, right? As long as we can have an awareness around this. And I think that safety is a really important component of being able to navigate this transit skillfully. Whew. Okay. Check the comments. Um, yeah, somebody is very ready to get out of the dang cave. Okay. So yeah, and I think just referring to Opalescent's comment, I'm so ready to get out of the dang cave. Creating enough safety, right, and not rushing out, but like moving slowly, right, and being able to like take one step, seeing how it feels, and then maybe like moving back in. They call it like titration or pendulation, right? Leaning into the discomfort, sitting there, moving back into what's comfortable, and then leaning back into the discomfort and seeing if we can tolerate it a little longer. It builds our window of tolerance for coming out of the dang cave. Okay, so also on Friday, June the 28th, we have Venus in Cancer sextile Mars in Taurus. So a sextile is a benefic aspect. It is communicative. It's a 60-degree angle where these planets are in good communication. And this occurs between planets which are in the, I don't like to use the word gender because, I think that it's a construct, but in the traditional astrology, we have masculine signs, which are the fire and air signs, which tend to be more active, outgoing. And then we have feminine signs, which are the earth and water signs, which tend to be more receptive, right? So sextiles happen between the receptive signs, two receptive signs, or two active signs. And so we are getting Venus in Cancer, which is a water sign, sextiling Mars in Taurus, which is a earth sign. So these are receptive, right? So it's a communication that's occurring between Mars and Venus. And this is maybe like less like I'm gonna go out and do some stuff, and maybe more like receiving and kind of feeling into, right, these kind of Martial and Venusian aspects. Um, Venus in Cancer is operating as the ruler of Taurus, right? Venus rules Taurus, which is where Mars is. So Mars is going through a Venusian period, right? A Taurian period. Um, Venus in Cancer is looking for some deep and nurturing emotional connections and relationships that help us feel safe enough to be our authentic self, right? And so this is the partnerships, the friend groups, right? The beautiful things that we have around us, the sensual pleasures that help us to feel really seen and really connected to, like, oh, this makes my emotional world feel good, right? This makes me feel safe. This puts my kind of like nervous system at ease. This helps me to relax. These are part of the qualities of Venus, is regulating our nervous system through beauty, through relationship, through co-regulation, through community, through aesthetics, right? Through good food, nice fabric, right? If you think about going into an environment where there's like terrible music playing, like a CD skipping, right? Like flickering fluorescent light, it like just makes you feel a type of way, right? It smells bad, right? You just think about that situation. It like feels a type of way. Or I don't know, like walking into any like junior high school, right? It like feels gross. And no shade on any junior high school teachers or administrators, but I think that there's like an institutional aesthetic of schooling, which is like pretty anti-Venusian and pretty gross feeling, right? And we like our bodies and our emotional bodies and our spirits feel some type of way. And then think about going into an environment where there's good music playing, there's really nice fragrance, right? Maybe good incense, they're nice, like there's good lighting, there's nice things to touch, good fabrics, soothing patterns, right? And our nervous system sort of relaxes a little bit. Um, Oh, yeah. So somebody's saying, isn't that sort of the opposite of Mars energy? Yes. Well, opposite, maybe. There's an interesting relationship between Venus and Mars. In the mythology, they were lovers, right? Venus could never marry Mars because she was promised to Hephaestus and was in an arranged marriage with Hephaestus, the god of smithing, the blacksmith god. But Venus and Mars were lovers, right? They had a thing going on. And so I wouldn't say that they're necessarily opposites. Like they have a relationship, but they have different aims and goals, right? Mars is like appetite and desire, right? Mars goes out and gets what it wants. Venus like draws things to her. And like the relationship between Mars and Venus can be really beneficial in the sense that Venus is like, yo, I want that. And Mars is like, yo, baby, I'm gonna get that for you, right? I'm gonna go out and get that, right? Venus is like, I want that coat, and Mars is like, I will break into that store and get it for you, right? So it can be really beneficial in helping us get what we want, right? Fulfilling our desire. Venus is our values, which tells us this is what I want, and Mars is like, okay, I like my will is to achieve that, and I will take action to go get that. So that can be really helpful. Mars, right? Since we're onto this topic, Mars is moving through Venus's sign in Taurus, which is a little challenging. Mars is in their detriment in Taurus. So a planet in detriment means that they don't really have their natural resources. They don't have the things that they naturally like to achieve their aim, right? Mars wants their like workout setup, they want their weaponry, they want their, axe throwing range, and Venus's Airbnb in Taurus doesn't have those things. It has like nice fabric, it has really good food. Mars, who is depicted in mythology as like a giant warrior, sort of coming into this like very low lighting, like nice, soothing, sensual Taurian den of like, a banquet and good music. Mars is sort of like comes in and is like awkward and like gets like blood and war grease on like the Louis Vuitton, right? And it's like, oh, such a klutz, right? Mars like starts eating the food and gets lazy and like feels bad about themselves because it's hard to be like in martial action when you're just like gorging yourself on a lot of like rich food and getting really sleepy. And so, Mars has a harder time accessing their will and performing their duties in the Venus ruled sign of Taurus. However, Venus as the ruler is sort of like, showing up or calling Mars and being like, oh, hey, like, here's an activity for you, right? Here's something that you can do that will make you feel good, that will help you to step into your warrior system, right? Or another way that we can think about this is Venus calls up and is like, hey, Mars, I know that you work really hard and you're like really hyper vigilant and like on the prowl for something to kill all the time. Like, why don't you like have a protein shake? There's one that I left for you in the fridge, and like we can put on this album for you that you really like that will help you to like down regulate your nervous system because that Mars principle that's always like, I got to do, I've got to kill, I've got to win, that can turn into like hypervigilance, that can be very stressful, that can, is like some nervous system activation that is happening on a regular basis. And as Mars moves through Taurus, there's maybe the opportunity to relax a little bit. And this Venus sextile may help Mars to relax and even be like, hey, why don't you go do something good for yourself? Right? Why don't you go out and make something beautiful? Right? This is an opportunity to nourish the parts of ourselves that are activated and always ready for action. And we can give them a bit of space to like chill out and enjoy life instead of feeling like we need to like fight or struggle or battle or whatever. Right. And so this helps balance our relational needs with self-assertion. Right. And this is a good time to take action, which is a Martial thing, to make things beautiful, which is a Venus thing. So, hanging art, beautifying your home, making music, right? Using that martial energy and drive for activity and action to create beauty. And I think that is a way that Venus and Mars kind of relate to each other, or to like go out and do beautiful things, go to a museum, right? Go take a walk in nature. These are like martial action, going and doing, right? To beauty and whatever you find beautiful, right? And that experience of beauty helps to down-regulate the nervous system, helps to create harmony, which I think Venus really appreciates, right? This also might be the uh, desire to like go and be social, right? And being social in a Cancerian way, right? Hanging out with family, hanging out with like people who are really close to you, right? Um, so yeah, Venus loves to socialize and Mars is like, let's make this happen. But I don't think this is like total ragers. I think that this is like small, intimate gatherings where we feel safe enough to be seen for who we really are and allow us to like let down our guard, let down those crab claws and to be vulnerable. Right. So yeah, yeah, Friday, good time to hang out with family and close friends. In summation. Okay, now we're moving on to the big one. This is let me just check this out. Ooh, congratulations. Wounded Healer Mama just said that they've been chosen to exhibit art for a they have been chosen to exhibit art for a month in their local art museum. Congratulations. That's awesome. Let's see here. Yeah, Leah is saying I've heard that Venus tells Mars what she wants and he gets it for her. Exactly. Um, Okay, and Hank has to start his anger management class. So, if you're starting your anger management class, also like go out and do something nice for yourself, right? Because that's can be frustrating and that can be, that's new and new experiences can be challenging, right? And so like also going out and like experiencing beauty to help like support that experience of down regulating that Mars, right? Or, on the flip side, like going out and doing some martial activity like running or martial arts to burn off some of that martial energy, right? So that's another way that we can work with it is, creating a beautiful, beautiful space where we work off some martial energy, like going for a run in nature. Okay, so this is the big one for the week, and also maybe for several months. On Saturday, June the 29th, Saturn stations retrograde at 19 degrees and 26 arc minutes of Pisces. Saturn will be all up in Gatorade until November the 15th when he stations direct at 12 minutes and 41 degrees of mutable Pisces. So Saturn will be stationing direct about 2 weeks after the presidential elections, and Saturn will be retrograde through the election. Just a interesting note. Not quite sure what that's going to look like, but it's interesting. Also, Pluto will have retrograded back into Capricorn just in time for the presidential election. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. So Saturn stationing brings an intensity. Anytime a planet stations, what they are doing, either retrograde or direct, is they are slowing down in their movement through the zodiac, right? They're slowing down, they are stopping at a degree, and they kind of like grind their way into that degree. So like this 19-degree point, Saturn is like slowing down and like applying all this pressure as they're hitting the brakes, right? And they're like, yeah, right. And then they start moving backwards. And so, pressure tends to increase as they grind to a halt, right? And this can bring up some intense feelings. And Saturn feelings are responsibility, pressure, weight, right? Saturn is associated with lead, right? So it is this lead weight pressing down on us as Saturn posts up at this 19th degree for a little while. Um, so this might be, yeah, feelings of responsibility increasing, feelings of consequences of our previous actions, right? This lead weight pressing down on us and causing us to like reverse course and rethink some Saturnian things. So Saturn retrograde is going to ask us to rethink what we are building, rethink what we are dedicating our time to, what we're trying to make real in the world and in our lives. Um, and in Pisces, which is associated with the imagination and the dream realm, Saturn might be like kind of a reality check, right? And a little bit of a rude awakening if we have just been kind of cruising along, you know. Oh yes, and somebody's Michelle DeMarco says sending lots of love to the people in their Saturn returns. Yes, and we're going to touch on that because if you have your natal Saturn in Pisces, you are going through your Saturn return right now, and I want to turn to Aaron Sullivan. Who is a great astrologer who just passed recently. Aaron wrote a great book on Saturn. This one is retrograde planets, which is excellent. And I just want to read a little passage of what Aaron is talking about. So, um, like as Saturn kind of moves back and forth over these sensitive degrees in the chart, and especially for those folks who are going through their Saturn return or who have angles or personal planets between like 19 and 12 degrees of Pisces or any of the mutable signs, because Saturn will be opposing or squaring those. Aaron says the seeds sown in the first hit of Saturn passing over those points undergo a period of gestation, maturation, and eventual birth at the final passage over the same degree. And so like as Saturn is moving back over it, it's like a planting, right? And then retrograde, and there's like a gestation as it passes back over it, and then final birth as Saturn makes their last passage. And Aaron goes on to say that Saturn delivers that which he entombs. Right. And so, like, as Saturn is moving through Pisces, there's like stuff being kind of like entombed there, and then it is maturing and then being resurrected as Saturn kind of like passes back and forth over those degrees. Right. And so one of the ways that I've been thinking about Saturn through Pisces is dealing with the weight of water. And oddly enough, like as Saturn like entered into Pisces back in 23, there was the Titan sub implosion, right? Which Saturn was a Titan. This sub was trying to go down to the Titanic, right? The incredible weight of water like imploded the sub, which is a total Saturnian thing, the pressure like causing something to implode. And so if we think about the weight of water, the weight of imagination, the weight of emotion, right, pressing down on us. And so one of the things that we're doing as Saturn retrogrades is rethinking the ways that we deal with the pressure of water as we dive deeper into Pisces, as Saturn goes deeper into Pisces, right? Saturn is the kind of external pressure created by circumstances, right? We can think about this as the war in Gaza, climate change, wealth inequality, housing shortage, or the two-party U.S. political system, the impending the impending presidential election. All of these external circumstances are applying pressure to the individual psyche, right? And these are things that I don't have the capability to change, right? These are societal kind of pressures that are also impacting me. I can do things to, help create change, right? But I don't have the power to be like, okay, like that's done, right? I wish I did. But then again, maybe I'm not responsible enough to have that. And this is what Saturn is teaching us, like our limitations and also our responsibilities and how we can show up within the constraints of our limitations to really honor our responsibilities, right? And so the weight of these kind of external factors impact our internal lives and impact our daily lives and create mental and emotional strain on our systems, right? And so Saturn retrograde through Pisces, we're kind of being asked to reconsider the internal structures that we have created to manage the external pressures, right? Like, how do we deal with all of this stuff that we are taking in, the pressures of life? Is it sitting on your phone and doom scrolling, right? Is it like getting drunk? Is it taking drugs? Is it, going to school? right? How do we like create a container in ourselves to hold the emotional weight of the world? And Pisces can very much be like, I'm out, right? I'm phew, whoa, right? I'm out. See ya. Right. Can want to disassociate through drugs, alcohol, right? Fantasy, dream, television, right? And so Saturn, which is very much about reality, is like, how do we be present, right? How do we hold this? What are the structures that I can create? Or here we are rethinking the structures that we have been creating around being able to hold the kind of external pressures of the world and these emotional pressures which are weighing down on us, and the ways in which we respond to everything that is sort of arising in the internal system from the external pressure, because there can be a lot of like, it's hopeless, right? Whatever, disassociate, doom scroll, into like, we need to like rethink what we're doing to kind of manage because we're here, right? And there is no escaping this because we're here. And that's what Saturn tells us, right? And this gives, and given the circumstances that we find ourselves in, what lasting contribution are we trying to create in the world? Because Saturn is dedication, right? Saturn is discipline and obedience. Saturn says if you do something every single day, that will create a groove, that will make something happen, that will make something real. So what are we doing? Right. And to rethink what actions we are taking on a consistent and daily basis, what things we want to dedicate our time and energy towards to make real in this world, right? And kind of needing to navigate that pressure, the emotional pressure, the weight of water that makes us want to like disassociate and check out. And Saturn is like, okay, well, if you do that, that's what you are going to be contributing. Another like disassociated, checked out soul. And I'm not saying that we have to like grind our way into the matrix every single day, or like grind ourselves into reality or raw dog reality constantly, right? But if we our contribution is consistently disassociating and checking out, then we're not like, it's really hard to make something real when we're not actually here. And Saturn is like, let's rethink this, huh? Right? Like, let's rethink what we're dedicating our time to. And so Saturn, or Kronos, was an agricultural god, right? Well, that's one of their responsibilities in the ancient world, dealing with the actual work and toil of farming. And so we can think about this retrograde as needing to rethink our approach to our garden, right? So do we need to change the garden's layout, right? Do we need to rethink our watering schedule? Do we need to reconsider what we're growing because what we wanted to plant may not be working in the soil of our location, right? Ooh, yeah, Jeff, committing to taking naps every day. I think that is actually a great Saturnian in Pisces practice, because Pisces deals a lot with the dream, right? And Saturn is structure. So if we are structuring dream time, that can be really inspiring and inspirational, right? And helping us to maintain our energy for the long haul, which Saturn is dedicated to long time growth, right? And so coming back to this gardening analogy, what do we need to shift in the garden, in the agricultural system that we are developing to adopt to the current conditions, right? And what needs to happen to better hold the pressure of our situation, right? And so Saturn tells us that our energy and resources are finite. And the Saturn retrograde asks us to consider where we are putting our energy, right? This beautiful finite resource of our human energy. What are we dedicating to? What are we practicing? Right. And so we also might be rethinking ideas of responsibility, what we are responsible for, right? Who we're responsible to, and the places that maybe we've been avoiding our responsibility, or the places where we've been taking on too much. Pisces has a bit of a martyr complex, right? And can be like, oh, I'm holding the weight of the world all the time, right? Don't look at me, but look at me, right? I carry such a heavy weight. And so, maybe we can let down some of that like too much responsibility, right? and feeling the responsibility of needing to like carry water, literally carry water for everybody else. And so thinking about the places where we can set that down or come into right relationship or a right sizeness, you know. And also like rethinking or considering what are the consequences of our actions thus far, right? As we are about halfway through Pisces and halfway through Saturn's time in Pisces. I believe Saturn is in Pisces until March of 25, right? And so, or maybe I have a note of that. Saturn entered Pisces on March 7th of 2023, and our current kind of like zone, right? Our current Saturn zone in Pisces began on November 4th, 2023, when Saturn turned direct after their last retrograde, and that direct was at 0 degrees of Pisces. So we've gone, about halfway through the sign of Pisces since November 4th, right? And so Saturn is turning retrograde, and we're rethinking a lot of the stuff that we have been sort of working on since November the 4th. And again, things about responsibility, right? The consequences of our actions since that time, right? What we have been working on since, basically like November of 2023. Um, yeah, and let me see. Okay. Yeah, also, the retrograde is in turning inward, right? And so we're going within to think about the internal structures that we have constructed to hold the emotional world that we are living in, right? Or the emotional experience of living in this world. And we can think about this as a container, right? Saturn is a structure, it's a container, and Pisces is watery, right? So like, well, how do we hold all of this water? How do we hold all this watery, emotional, imaginal feelings, right? And so, Pisces also connected with creativity, imagination, dream, right? And the sense of connection with the divine. And so how do these principles, right? Creativity, divinity, right? Spirituality, the imaginal world, how do these help support the container that Saturn is creating here to contain the weight of the world, the emotional weight of the world? And I think that there's a piece about like the separation, right? Saturn and Pisces is being like, this is reality, that is the dream, right? There's only this, and then there's only that. And I think, thinking about, okay, how do we get these things to work together, right? How do we create the physical structures in our systems, right? Through practices, whether it's spiritual practice, right? Whether it's daily practice, whether it's work practice, whether it's, the practices that we are participating in are creating the container to ideally hold not just like the emotional weight of water, but also the our creative ability, our spiritual longings, right? Our spiritual desires, our imaginal world. And so this is a way that we can get these to work together, right? Um, and so maybe one of the last things that I want to talk about is in the 36 Faces, which is a book on the decans of the zodiac that Austin Coppock wrote. He calls the second decan of Pisces, which is where this retrograde is happening. The decans are 10-degree segments, and this retrograde going from 19 degrees back to 12 degrees. So all in the second decan, right? So Austin Coppock calls the second decan of Pisces the net, right? And so he says, here the central conflict is how to reconcile one's understanding of the true nature of reality with the world as it is. It is thus a case of finding harmony with apparent reality of things while living and embodying one's ideals, right? And so how do we reconcile like reality with our creative imaginal life, right? And how do we you know em embody our ideals in the like hard structures of the real world? And that's what Saturn through the second decan of Pisces is trying to figure out, and that's what we are rethinking, right? the imaginal, the spiritual, and the physical and the real world, right? And how our ideals can function in a world with all of this pressure. Right. And so we're rethinking our relationship between the material and the spiritual dimensions of life. Um, and considering how what is formed in the material world can be a product of spiritual process, right? So how our spiritual practices help to form this container that allows us to hold the experience of living in late stage capitalism, right? In 2024, right? How spiritual practice, or dream work, or the practices that also engage the spiritual and unseen dimensions of life can help to form a better container in which to navigate, and help us to structure ways in which to navigate a pretty challenging world. And instead of being like, Saturn, no, like all of that is invisible and unreal, like only what I can touch and feel, I don't think that's actually going to help us, right? We're not trying to shut off the imaginal or the creative faculties of the self, but we're trying to figure out ways of structuring them to welcome them in to our everyday reality, to help us to navigate the immense pressure of the emotional experience of living in this world, right? Um, yeah, so like considering and even reconsidering how we create a container to hold the bigger vision, right, that we are trying to make manifest in the world. Because it is this vision, right, the Piscean vision, the divine vision that we receive, that Saturn is like, I am dedicating my life to making this real. And so this is also a time of rethinking that vision. What is the orientation point? What is that lighthouse that I want to be moving towards? That my daily practice, the daily work that I show up for, can really help to create to make real and be a contribution to the world that I'm living in. You know. Let me just see what else. Yeah, and where Saturn might enforce the boundaries between the material and spiritual world, between like day world and night world, right? I think what we're trying to do is find ways of integrating them, right? Creating physical containers through practice, right? And meditation practice might be a great way of thinking about this, that we can have containment for the divine part of the self and a spiritual life, so that we can make it manifest in the world, right? And maybe reconsider what spiritual life is like, and what is the right relationship between the spiritual and the physical world. And so maybe the last thing that I want to say is that this Austin Coppock talks about this uh, face of the zodiac as the net, right? All of the decans have symbols to them, and Austin has attributed some of his own, right? And I think other people who've written on them like have attributed some of their own. And Austin talks about it as a net, right? And if we think about Saturn as structure and Pisces as water, right, to think about how we are structuring water. And a net is a great way of structuring water, right? Because instead of having to like have this massive cistern or container that we need to like lug down and like lift up and like carry back to like go into and try and pull out the things that we want, a net, right? The structure of a net just like goes in, scoops it up, the water is able to run through, and we are being left with what we pull out from the watery, briny deep, you know. And so I just think it's really interesting. It's the kind of synchronicity of Saturn retrograding back through this zone of the zodiac, which can be considered a net, right? And thinking about structuring water. And as we retrograde back, maybe it's rethinking the nets that we are using, or the containers that we are creating, or like mending the net that we are using. Right. Maybe the holes are too big, and all of the precious stuff is sluicing out, right? Because we're just doom scrolling, right? Or maybe the holes are too small, and we're like coming up with like tons of like gunk and seaweed, or like it's just holding way too much water and it's really heavy. And so again, thinking about what is the structure that we want to hold this in. right? What is the right amount for me to be holding at one time? And what are the ways that I can increase my capacity to hold more through a dedicated practice? And being able to really rethink that and reconsider that, and allowing time to go inward to tune into this greater vision, the initiating vision, which is like what we're really considering. This is what I want to make real. This is what is worth dedicating my life and my time to. And even if you're not like, oh, I'm going to dedicate my entire life to it, like we're here and we're doing it, my friend. So we are like putting our energy into something. And if that energy, like, where attention goes, energy flows. And so to be very considerate or reconsiderate about the places that we're allowing our attention to go, and the places that we want to focus our energy, and what we actually want to practice in the world, right? Because talk is cheap, and Saturn says, action, baby. Like, what are you going to do about it, right? You want to make the world a better place? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to show up each and every day to do that, right? What is your practice going to be that helps to contain that better world that you have this vision of? Right. And I think a lot of this begins in the self, and this is what the retrograde is about, is mending our own net so that we can hold our internal world and really be purifying our internal world so that we can bring that into the external world. And with that, my friends, I will bid you a fond farewell. I really appreciate all y'all tuning in for another week in space. It is my great honor, privilege, and pleasure to get to do this for y'all each and every week. And if you don't know, if you haven't heard, I do this every single Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. I do this through the AstroStar Live app, which is a great astrology app where there are a bunch of very talented and beautiful astrologers doing some excellent work and forming a very vibrant community. It's a free download. You can check it out at AstroStar Live on your apps app. I have a link in my bio. I will throw a link in the show notes on the YouTube if you're already on AstroStar. I appreciate you. Thanks for being there. And oh, thank you, Wounded Healer Mama 6. Yes, I also do a astrology-based radio show each and every week, which you can find on my SoundCloud, which is Camp Wizard Camp. I also have a link to that in my stories on Instagram, and I'll put a link in the show notes on the YouTube. But every single week, it was on Friday. I think it needs to shift to Saturday. That comes out on my Patreon on Saturday, and then Sunday to the general public. I do something similar to this, but instead of me talking, I play music, pop music, country music, hip hop, reggae, whatever I feel that I find to be in line with the transits of the week. So if you would like to get your weekly Astro Weather in a more danceable form, I got you. You can check it out on Patreon. Yeah, you can check it out through my Patreon, which is Camp Wizard Camp, or you can check it out on SoundCloud, Camp Wizard Camp, or, link in bio. Talk to my man, link in bio, or in the stories. You can find it. I'm out there. Anyway, yeah, check out AstroStar Live, check out my radio show, join my Patreon. Why not? Right? And make sure to tune in next week. Same wizard time, same wizard channel. And until then, I hope you all have a beautiful week in space. And as always, may the force be with you, my friends. Until next time, for now. All right. Thanks, everybody. Let's see here. Goodbye. Boop. And, and this one. Bye now.